Welcome back, everybody. In the last video, we started to add some controls to our add edit view. So what we're going to do in this video is finish up adding those controls, and then in future videos, we're going to hook those controls up into our code. So we have our title, which was a label, then we have a text box, then we have a label, then we have a text field. So time for another label. So label, this one will go, remember, we're going to use our blue lines to make sure we are adhering to the human interface guidelines from Apple. We're going to set this to be priority, and what we're going to do is we're going to center this like usual, and now it's time to add our constraints. A constraint above, constraint to the left, constraint to the right, and that's all the constraints we need. You might remember a few minutes ago we added a height constraint, but that's because this control needed a height because there was no set height. This control has a set height, so we don't need a height constraint. Now, the priority, as we know, if we go over here, is an enum. There's four possibilities to choose from. You have a variety of choices as to what type of control we could use. We could use a drop-down list. We could use some radio buttons. Who knows what? But what I have chosen to do is something called a segmented control. So I'm going to take a segmented control using our blue lines. I'm going to set it up nicely right here. And again, the first thing I'll do is I'll set up our constraints. So vertical spacing, leading spacing, and trailing spacing. So we have our priority, but this particular segmented control only has 2 segments. So what we want to do is click on the control. We're going to go up here, and you'll see that you could choose the number of segments. So I'm going to bump that up to 4. And let's give each one an appropriate name. So we're going to go low, press enter. And we'll go to segment number 1, and we'll go to normal, and press enter. Then we'll go to segment number 2, and we will go to high, press enter, and then we'll go to segment number 3, and we will press urgent. And press enter, and now we have low, medium, high, and urgent, and that matches our priority. Low, normal, high, and urgent. Again, when we talk about the code, we'll discuss how this works. Okay, so one more thing to do. We need another label. That label will be another label, so we'll make sure we place it in a nice place. This is going to become somewhat routine. We're going to call this as a due date. Okay, and we're going to center that. We're going to add our constraints. Constraint above, constraint to the left, constraint to the right, and there we go. So, do we have a due date? As we originally said when we made the to-do model, the due date has this exclamation mark, meaning it's optional. So sometimes when we make a to-do, we might have a due date, and sometimes we might not. So in our storyboard, we have to have a way to say whether or not we want to have a due date. To do that, we're going to do a new thing called a switch. And a switch is just that. Just like on the wall for your light, it goes on and off. And it's nice and easy to place. We're going to center it right under has a due date. I'm not going to resize it. I'm going to leave it the normal size. And I'm going to constrain it vertically. And I'm going to do something new here. I'm going to go back up here and say I want it to be centered horizontally. So it'll stay, first of all, vertically spaced, but also it'll stay on the same horizontal line. So now we have our nice little switch. Now, what we need is the ability for the user to enter a date. Again, we could find all kinds of ways of entering a date, but let's do something kind of neat called a date picker. So, I'm going to grab the date picker, and you got to be careful here because you want it underneath the switch, and you want it on the left margin. We're then going to pull in the right-hand side so it's on the right margin. We're then going to move it up so you see only about 3 lines of the date. So there you go. You have the date, which is underneath the switch. It's on the left margin, right margin, and so forth. But for our date, we don't need time, we just need date. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the mode to just date. So this will allow us to set a date without worrying about time. Okay, time for constraints. So the first constraint will be to the switch, vertical spacing. The next constraint will be to the margin, that'll be leading. The next constraint will be to the other margin, that'll be trailing. And notice it's still yellow because we have to set what? We have to set the height. And there we go, it's all nice and blue. So that's good. So we have one last thing to do. We have a cancel button, but we don't have a save button. So let's go ahead and add another button, and let's put it down in the bottom left. Sorry, in the bottom right. I'm going to call this the add button. And I'm going to constrain it where? I'm going to constrain it to the left, to the right margin, and I'm going to constrain it vertical spacing. So there we go. We have our entire view laid out. So let's run it and see how it looks. Notice we have some extra spacing here, but we won't worry about that for now. This is not a perfect app. It's just to get the ball rolling. So let's click on add. And there we go. We have our title. We have our text. We have our priority. We have our due date. And we have our date picker. We have our cancel. And we have our add. So what I'm going to do is just erase this now so that we don't have any extra data. Let me make sure that it's still there. And we're ready to go. We're ready to start doing some code. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to start wiring all of this up and making it work. Thanks a lot. See you soon.